All right, everybody, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools and DIY channel. Once again, it's Tuesday, and we are here for another live session. So I would hope that you guys join in, whether it's now or on the replay. Appreciate you anyway. It's not going to be a long live. I know I say that a lot, but, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, a lot of stuff is happening out there in the world today, a lot of chaos, a lot of tension. You can, pretty much feel it in the air. A lot of lives are being disrupted and all that stuff. And, it's an unfortunate situation. But this live is pretty much about where you see yourself. Okay? Where do you see yourself? Maybe 6 months down the line, a year down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years, who knows, right? But it's very important that we do have a vision, or a timeline, I should say. And I know life is not linear. All kinds of things could happen. You can go back and go forward, all that. I understand that, but it's very important to at least have some kind of benchmarks, goals, milestones that you want to reach in order, at least for me, in order to make life worth it, right? Without those, what's the point? You're just living. But in a more practical sense, this is very important when it comes to quality of life. We all know that our financial status determines our quality of life. It determines where we want to live. It determines so many things. What house we want to live in, our accommodations, disposable income. What do we want to do, or what do we see ourselves doing? Or do we see ourselves traveling the world, or do you see yourself living in the same neighborhood and not going anywhere, like some people do, right? So it's all really, it's all a state of consciousness. It's all a mindset at the end of the day, okay? And that's why I titled it, just to keep it down to earth: short-term money, job, long-term money, trade. Just to keep it in the theme of the channel. But you can replace job with you can replace trade with like career, right? It can be anything. It doesn't have to be in the building trades. It can be in any trade or any vocation, I should say, right? But what I'm trying to get across to you guys is that anytime you think short term, you're going to get the short end of the stick, right? Anytime you think short term, eventually you'll get the short end of the stick. The world rewards long-term thinkers, right? The world rewards long-term thinkers. And I get it. Life is tough. Bills have to be paid. And, the bare necessities have to be provided for. So we run out there and we say, okay, I got to get a job. I got to pay this bill. My credit card bills are like, I'm on so much debt, right? So we got to go get that job. So what happens with that type of thinking is that short-term thinking probably got you in debt in the first place, right? And now, do you think short-term thinking is going to get you out of debt? Probably not. It's probably going to get you in more debt. If you were thinking long-term, you probably wouldn't have made that rash financial decision. You probably wouldn't have spent that money on whatever it was that got you in debt in the first place, right? If you were thinking long-term, you would have planned better. Now, I'm speaking to myself as well, okay? I'm speaking to myself as well. I've made these mistakes, and sometimes, hey, look, sometimes I still make that mistake. So, but the point is here that, you have to think long-term if you want to survive, especially in a chaotic economy, in an economy where, inflation is up and wages are down, or they're not matching, right? So you have to think ahead. You can't make rash decisions, okay? And I push learning a trade on this channel exactly for that reason. Because, yeah, you can get out of high school, or, you can say, okay, I'm just going to get a job, and, I'll pay the bills. I got to be a 1-bedroom apartment, and I'll, just I'll figure it out. But that's not how it works, right? When you make wise decisions quickly, I don't know, it's kind of a paradox there, because sometimes it takes time to figure out what you want to do. I get it. I'm not rushing anybody. But when you make wise decisions quickly, the further you'll get ahead in life. Yeah, the further you'll get ahead in life. Okay, that's why I tell young people, don't just get a job, get a skill. That's exactly what you need. You need a skill. That's what's going to save you. That's the boat that's going to save you in the ocean of life. Having a skill that you can always fall back on, that you can always use to keep you afloat. Matter of fact, I advocate getting skill after skill after skill. That's really what you should be doing. Getting a job just to pay the bills is short-term thinking. Okay, you need to get a skill. You need to capitalize on it, even if you have to sacrifice just to get that skill. Because the price of not getting a skill, right, and just getting job after job after job, that you may stay on some of these jobs. You may actually even like some of the people on these jobs, and that's fine. I'm not knocking getting a job, but that's if you lose that job, like so many people have, or if you can't get a job, like a lot of college educated people can't get, then guess what you're left with, right? You're stuck out there, stuck in the ocean of bills, paying rent, paying mortgage. You may have a child, you may have a wife. Okay, you need to get something that is recession proof, right? That it doesn't matter what happens, you can go anywhere and profit from that skill. That's the difference between short-term money and long-term money. Short-term money, pay the bills. Long-term money is wealth building. Okay, that's what you should be doing, is building wealth. Now, I looked at I did some research, and I looked at the savings rate of Americans today. Let's look at it. Let's see what it's saying. Are Americans saving as much as they used to? Americans saved more disposable income during the pandemic, but people are still saving less than they did in the 1960s and 70s. Why is that, guys? Why are Americans saving less? Americans saved an average of 4.6% of their disposable income in 2024. So far in 2025, that average is lower, 4.4%. Okay. What are the reasons behind that? Okay, and high consumer debt, housing-related debt, strong economic indicators created a sense of financial security. Bank earnings hit a record of 2005. In other words, guys, people were saving more right after the financial crisis of 2000. I think in the 2000s, 2008 and 9. I think 2007, between 2009. Even after that, people were saving more money than they are now. And, I'm all about saving. Saving money is definitely a good trait to have. And that's part of the long-term strategy I'm talking about. Long-term money, building wealth. But how are you going to save money if you just, if you don't have a long-term strategy to do that, right? And once again, that's where a skill comes into the picture. All right. Having a skill, learning a trade, whatever trade that is, it doesn't have to be in the building trades, will allow you to be able to save money. Right. Having a job that you have to climb the ladder in, if they even let you get to where you want to be, they're going to pay you what they want. I'm sorry. Are you going to even have enough money to save or put away or even invest in, which is really the better strategy? Most likely no. Okay. And that's where most Americans are today, to be honest with you. They're living from check to check. I've been in that situation myself. I know how that feels. Okay. Nobody wants to be in that situation. hand to mouth, check to check, not knowing what's going to happen, at the mercy of a supervisor, a job that you don't like, putting all that stress on you. And on top of that, you may have a family to take care of. That's one of the worst situations to be in. But I think that's many people are in that situation, and it's normalized, right? To struggle, to struggle, to struggle. And that's, it's not a way to live. That's not living. That's not living. Oh, the American dream. That's definitely not it. If there is such a thing, but you have to create your own American dream. You have to create your own, vision, right? And you can only do that by honing in on one skill, get that down packed, and then from there you can evolve into other things, because that skill will allow you to move. It will give you the mobility to move around in this economy, in this world, and not just here in America, but this global economy, and make moves and make money. All right, make more money than just a job. And that freedom and that flexibility is really what's the most important thing. Okay. If you're tied down somewhere and you can't make those moves, it'll be hard to grow. And, time will fly by and you'll get comfortable with your discomfort. And that's what a lot of us have done. We've got comfortable with our discomfort. Ask yourself, is your situation getting any better? Are you further ahead than you were 6 months ago, a year ago? If the answer is no, or you struggle with that answer, then that's telling you something has to change. Let me see here. Go ahead. Yes, that's telling you something has to change, guys. Okay. So you have to start thinking long term. And that's going to require a sacrifice on your part. Anything that's worth having, if you're going to be in the long term game, requires sacrifice. That can be money, that can be time. You may have to lose sleep to acquire everything you need to be in the long term game. Okay, but in the end, it will pan out with a positive ROI, return on investment. In the short term game, it does not pan out. Okay, we all know what happens when you go out there and try to get fast money, right? A lot of people, they think about criminals or the criminal enterprise when you talk about fast money. But there's also, you can also end up in a without anything, losing everything, just like a criminal will at some point. You don't have to be a criminal to lose everything. You can, because you never, because there's an opportunity cost that you didn't think about. You never took the risk to jump from short term to long term. You're too busy risking everything on the short term. And that's why you end up shorted in life. Okay. So, you have to think about these things, guys, if you are really trying to survive in this world. I mean, look at what's happening out here in the world right now. I'm over here in California, and, they got all this stuff going on. And, some people, they were thinking short term, right? And they got caught up, right? Anyway, that's another story. So, yeah, guys, that's pretty much it, guys. Learning a skill will always pay off for you, right? Learning a trade will always pay off for you. I guarantee it. I mean, that's allowed me to come on here on these platforms and talk about what I talk about, right? I'm not necessarily even digging ditches or anything like that. It's not really what I was going to do anyway, but what I've learned, I've brought to you guys on the channel. So that's one way it benefited me, so I can benefit others, right? That's long-term thinking, right? If there's going to be a crisis of food in the world, guess what you're going to do? You're gonna, if you're thinking long-term, you're going to go out there and you're going to build a home garden where you can grow your own food, and then you're going to get the skills, possibly to build your own house, right? So you'll be more independent. That's long-term thinking, guys. That's where you should be. That's where your mind should be in the long-term game. You know, in the long-term game, things don't come right away. You may see the guy over there or gal over there who's the short-term thinker getting all the fast results, right? But a lot of times there's no substance there, right? The work wasn't put in. Anytime it's almost like it's like a flashy, what do they call it? Just think of something flashy, right? It looks flashy, looks good, but or it can even be a person. They look good on, Hold on, guys. Yeah, sorry about that. It's kind of blanked out. Yeah, everything on the outside is perfect, but when they open their mouth, it's like nothing there, right? That's kind of the short-term game, right? And then you talk to someone who may not be as maybe physically appealing, but man, their intelligence, their personality, their wit, or even their empathy, I should say, it's like, that makes them beautiful, right? So that's what the long-term game is. And it may not look pretty on the outside, right? In the beginning, right? It may not look pretty. It may not look pretty on the outside because you got to put in all this work. You may have to spend some money, may have to spend some time, that you didn't want to spend. Where, the person out there, they don't have to do any of that. They just got make a few phone calls, a couple of connections, and they got it, right? But you're out here busting your what just to get somewhere. But the difference between you and that person is that you're building something that they're not building. You're building character, right? You're building all the skills you need to survive in the long game. They're not. And unfortunately, a lot of them end up, in locked up or something like that, right? Because they didn't have the skills to survive in the long game. Yeah, guys. So that's it. Job or trade, right? Short term or long term. Which one are you going to be? Are you gonna put in the work when everybody else is asleep? Are you going to dedicate yourself? Are you going to focus on that goal, that vision? And you got to narrow it down. Whatever that vision is, you got to narrow it down to that one thing and focus on that. It's almost like a horse when it's running around the track. You ever see those horse races? Those horses, they have the blinders on. They put the blinders on the horse for a reason, so it can just stay focused on moving ahead. And that's pretty much what you have to do as well, because there's so many distractions out here to knock you off your square, knock you off your game. There's too many out here. Okay. This right here is one of the biggest distractions, guys. I'm not talking about people necessarily, but it's people too, but it's this right here. It's everything else. The distractions have multiplied 100 times since maybe 1920 or something like that. They didn't have all these distractions, even in the 70s or 80s. Technology, as great as it is to allow me to talk to you guys live right now, there's always dark side to everything. Even this, right? This can really distract you and get you caught up. Illa Dre, hey man, facts. Appreciate it. Yes, sir. Just trying to impart some wisdom here. Brooklyn, you have wisdom. John 3:16. Jesus knows the hear and follow him 24/7. Got you on that. Yeah, we all need guidance. We all need guidance, whether you got to pray to God or go within. However you do it, we got to sit still and find that place that's calm and allows us to view our existence, our life, what's going on from an objective sense. Sometimes we got to get out of our emotions and what we want and see where we are exactly. You know what I'm saying? And that way, from that place, you start to formulate your long-term game, not from an emotional place, but from a place of, okay, this is where I am. This is where I want to be. Illa Dre, you have been spinning these facts since Everport. Glad you ain't changed your message. Everport. Man, it's been a minute since I talking about the ports down there. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a minute. Man. Good to hear from you, brother. Glad you dropped in. Yeah, every now and then I try, I come in with the mindset talk. Because at the end of the day, man, with all this stuff going on around us, Illa Dre, it's our mindset is gonna get us through this. Whatever we're going through, it's really our mindset. And you can see the difference in mindsets. Some people, they fall by the wayside. They lose their minds. You know how many people I see walking up and down the street, talking to themselves, or just look like they lost it. Young people too. It's like, man, what happened? And people come from all kinds of circumstances. Who knows what's going on in the house. It's a lot of sick stuff happening in the world. We know this that affects people, and see them out in the street. It could happen to anybody. It could it could happen to us. It could happen to me and you. And you just got to look at them and say, man, that could be me. And I've been in some pretty precarious situations myself. So I understand. I understand. But yeah, like anytime you take your eyes off the prize and you take your eyes off the long game, you lost right there, man. And that goes for relationships, that goes for jobs, life in general. Life in general. So it's a constant battle. It's almost like a war with oneself. Not to mention other folks out there in the world who don't mean you well. So you gotta be vigilant all the time. You gotta be vigilant all the time. You gotta question things all the time. Am I making the right decision? You gotta weigh the options, because sometimes one looks good, but when you flesh it out and really look at it compared to something else, that thing that looks good may not even be worth it. Right? That goes for people, that goes for everything. Jobs, whatever, careers, just choices in general. And anytime I've made a rash move, I've made a move without really thinking it through, it always blows up in my face. I'm telling you right now. And that's sometimes you ask yourself, man, when will you learn? But one day, once you lose enough, I had a friend, he passed away right now. And he had a saying. His saying was, let me see if I can remember what he said, but yeah, he said, life is about loss. Life is about loss. That's what was his saying. And I thought, hey man, that's kind of negative. Why you talking like that? But I said to myself, man, he must have lost so much in his life that he started to look at life through the lens of loss. And he don't get me wrong, life is about loss in a lot of aspects. We got certain things we do have to lose in order to grow, right? Certain things we have to cast away, or we will lose them just by us trying to grow or get ahead, or we may lose them by us not evolving, and that thing, it could be a person, evolves past us. And we end up losing them like that. So it's different ways to lose things, but they're all lessons. It's all lessons. And I see a lot of loss in young folks today, especially in my community. And I'm not downing my community when I say that. I'm just saying I tend to see the ones that are struggling, that I know need help. Right? I tend to look at them more. It's almost like a parent that has a lot of kids, and then they got that one kid that's just, a troublemaker, or may even be handicapped or have some developmental problem. most of the attention is going to go to that one kid, right? The kid that has the problems. The parent's not going to worry so much about the other kids that seem to be doing okay. So I tend to, when I'm out and about in the world, you know, I'm very empathetic to the trials and tribulations of my community. And that's not to say I'm not empathetic with anybody else's. But let me put it like this. If you have an illness or there's something wrong with your body, let's just say you have a knee problem, your knee is bad, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor asks you, hey, what's wrong with you? And you say, well, let me, he says, let me see if I can figure it out. And he's going everywhere but the knee. He's trying to fix everything but the knee. Is that a good doctor? Is that a doctor that's really empathetic to your issues or trying to hear what you have to say? Even if you said to that doctor, oh, no, it's my knee, and they don't listen. They say, no, it's somewhere else. Well, that's not a good doctor, right? You go to where the source of the problem is. And in this country, in this economy, the community that suffers the most is my community. So yes, I address the problems and issues of my community. Not to say that I don't acknowledge there are, other people in other communities have other issues as well. But my community has been suffering the most, and I'm unapologetic about addressing those issues. And those who don't like that, then fine. I have no problem losing those people in my life or whatever. But I'm going to focus on where the source of the problem is, right? And that's my community, the one that suffers the most. Okay, the ones that suffers the most. So, really, when I created this channel, I wanted to get the information out to everybody, but especially my community, the ones that need the most knowledge and needs help the most. Okay, and that's how it's going to be on this channel. That's how it's going to be. Simple and plain. Anyway, guys, short term, long term. That's pretty much what life comes down to when it comes to decision making, whether it's you getting out of bed in the morning, deciding to go here, deciding to go there. At the end of the day, it comes down to those two things: a short-term decision or long-term decision, right? If you want to get in shape, are you going to stop at the donut shop every day to get a donut? No, you're not going to do that, even though you feel like doing it, right? Because you haven't conquered that urge yet. But if you're a short-term thinker, you're going to be at the donut shop all day, every day. And then your life and your body's going to represent the results of those short-term decisions. But if you want, if you want to be in shape, you're going to go to the gym, or you're going to go work out, go for a jog, go for a walk every day. Eat right, right? That's long-term thinking. So we all have a choice there, guys. There's, every second we have that choice to make. Okay. And I'm right there with you in the struggle. Don't get me wrong. I'm on here talking on YouTube, but I'm right here in the struggle, man. Don't get it twisted. Just because I'm on YouTube doesn't mean I don't deal with stuff. I deal with stuff every day. Sometimes I'm like, man, I got to do this live. But you know what? I don't struggle too much with the lives though, because, I know it's an opportunity to talk to my people, talk to the Calibrate Tools family. And, so I don't really struggle too much with it. That's why I've been doing it for the last, I don't know how long. That's why it's very important, guys, to find something that you enjoy doing. I'm not saying you got to be in love with it, but you got to like it. You got to like it. You know what I'm saying? You got to like it enough to keep doing it. You may not like certain things about your significant other, right? But does that mean you're gonna just keep jumping from person to person to person, trying to find something you like? You'll be a very unhappy person, because you're never gonna find that in a person. It's always gonna be something about that person that you don't like, or that you don't necessarily care for. But when you look at yourself in the mirror, guess what? Are there things about you that you like? Everything? Do you like everything about yourself? I know I don't necessarily care for everything about myself because I'm a work in progress. Doesn't mean I don't love myself, but I'm a work in progress. I'm not where I should be. But it's all in universal timing, like they say, God's timing. And by the way, when I say God, I'm not talking about a God in the sky. I'm talking about the God within all of us, within everything. Okay, gotta get in touch with that. Anyway, guys, I hope you got something from this. Appreciate you, Illa Dre. Thanks for coming on. E Brooklyn, always appreciate you, your words. Yeah, the Most High knows the heart because the Most High is in the heart. That's right. Preaching the hostile gospel. I hear you. That's right. All right, man. You guys take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.